building a full introspection bootkit for defensive capabilities. I'd like to introduce Micronesia. So please give a warm ShmooCon welcome
to Loc Nguyen
from Exodus Intelligence. So thank you guys.
All right. So just a few disclaimers, you guys. Do not search for Micronesia on Twitter. There's some freak nasty stuff out there. I mean, unless you're into that, but don't pull out your phones and do it during the talk. Do it afterwards. Another one, I kind of have social anxiety, so like, give me a break. I have some flaws. I may stutter a bit. And this is especially my first talk, so thank you guys for being there. Oh, thank you. All right, see you guys. Anyways, so this is Micronesia sub-kernel kit for insider threat detection. So as an outline, we're going to go through a brief introduction, kind of get ready for the talk. The bulk of it is actually background. So it's like kind of a complex problem space. So that means it's kind of like 3 talks in one. So unfortunately, that means I can't go too in depth into each component of it. But it's a necessary thing to build up the background for this talk. And then after that, we can go over Micronesia, how it's built. And afterwards, we can go over conclusions, talk about food for thoughts, how insider threats are getting more advanced, how mitigations are coming about. So introduction, work at Exodus Intelligence. We're a pure exploitation shop. We're mainly bug hunters. We're kind of different from others in that we prefer to do quality work, not quantity. So we're willing to put in extra time to prove that something is unexploitable, for instance. And that's very uncommon in this industry. Nobody really cares about that. They're all about the theoretical, so they'll just pipe out some vulnerabilities and just call it a day, not actually try to prove that it's something usable. But we beg to differ that we like to show that others are releasing things that aren't actually exploitable. So the second bullet is we make good eye contact. That's actually a reference from our Time magazine cover this past July, I believe. So the author wrote some funny stuff describing my boss, Aaron Portnoy, and he mentioned that he makes good eye contact, and I thought that was hilarious that he had to point that out, like it's a necessary thing. And everyone amongst my company kind of makes good eye contact except for me. So Facebook fart burgers, what is that? So we disclosed the I2P bug this past summer, and then we're just like scouring around on Slashdot, probably like the best place to make yourself feel good. A little bit better than YouTube comments, and like one guy just straight up called us out and called us Facebook fart burgers. I don't know what it means. It's probably like a compliment, right? Well, if you guys know what it is, let's just come after a talk, explain to me what it is, but for now I'm just gonna assume it's something flattering. And then we often get called merchants that's not really our style. I don't know why people call us that. It's probably because they think we're some kind of mysterious organization, but we're really not. We all have faces, we all have families, we're all very personable. Just get to know us. We're not merchants of deaths. As for me, my name is Loc Nguyen, security researcher at Exodus Intelligence. I primarily focus on binary analysis tool development and exploit development. And most recently, got involved in low-level computing, so I'm fairly new to this space, but I feel like I've been making good progress. And this is why the talk is out here right now. Anyways, bingo slide, pull out your buzzword bingo cards. You guys didn't get them? All right, well, you're lost. If, oh, you don't drink? Oh, you do drink? All right, well, if you guys get bingo, I have some things to give away. Limited edition, only 200 made in the world. So yell bingo if you want some. Bingo. All right, well, let me get to the bingo part, all right? You can't say yell bingo before you play bingo. All right, ready for this? Buzzword bingo, right? Micronesia synergizes cyber attack methodologies through bootkit utilization in order to close the circle. You have to do this. You have to close the circle within a next-gen problem space of insider threat detection and associated risk mitigations, excluding cloud, hypervisors, and virtualization. All right, who won? All right, you got a limited edition business card. There's only 200 in the world. You can come up later and get it if you actually want it. It actually is limited edition. My boss only made 200. So, real quick, How many of you work in an organization where leaking IP is damaging to your organization? Raise your hand. All your hands should be raised up because every organization protects their IP. That's what your organization's all about, right? You leak it out, it's damaging. So, I mean, I just ripped off insider threat definition from a gov site. No big deal. We all kind of know what insider threat is. Somebody that works on the inside that has access to special confidential documents usually, or it doesn't even have to be that, just like special insider knowledge. And you have the ability to leak it out. So the big question of the talk is, can we detect an insider threat? So let's ponder on that, in the back of our heads as we continue on. So as a preventative measure, there's something called data leakage prevention. It's not like a direct solution against insider threats. It's kind of more trending towards tracking data movement. And there's been a lot of work in this, mostly identifying flaws in implementations or that it's just very lackluster when it's directed towards insider threats. And for the most part, they work pretty well for accidental data movement, not necessarily for somebody that's incentivized to leak out data. So you guys can check out these talks. I'm not going to delve too deeply into the attacks against DLP or its flaws. So principles of data leakage prevention. These are the three pillars. We have in use, in motion, and at rest. At rest is kind of out of scope for this talk, so I'll keep on mentioning that. It's not very interesting to me. But in use, it's kind of endpoint actions. In motion, we have network traffic, I/O, just like USBs, SD cards, etc. So current methods. In use, you typically see host-level agents. So these are these agents that are running on your actual systems. In motion, you see things like network traffic monitoring, deep packet inspection. At rest is something called data life expiration policy. I don't know what that is. Like I said, not very interested in at rest. So goals of DLP, identify, track, mitigate intentional and unintentional leakage of data outside the intended container. Very simple, right? Just tracking data movement. So real quickly in mitigations, host-level agents, you kind of have to establish a new secure host environment or you use a completely different computing environment. So you basically have to work in an environment that doesn't have the agents running. Network traffic monitoring, deep packet inspection. You can get around that simply just encrypting the traffic or sometimes unparsable data by deep packet inspection. So something like images, for instance. That's something that has to be typically human-eyed upon. I mean, I know computer vision's making great strides, but I'm not sure it's quite there yet to be able to replace human eyes on these types of things. And then data life expiration policy, out of scope. So scopes of DLP. Where does DLP typically reside at? It's usually at the ring 0 to the ring 3 layer. It typically acts as a type of driver. And this is just the computation rings. You guys should be kind of familiar with it. If not, it's kind of dividing out the different protection layers and then you rank it from most privileged to least privileged. So these types of things are dependent on external systems. They kind of ignore the context of what's going on. And the problem with it is it applies a large scope policy upon many, many people, and that brings about a lot of collateral. So instead of an external system determining leakage, what can we do? Self-determination. This is like this thematic spine of the entire talk. So this is what the talk is actually named after, Micronesia, the nation states of Micronesia. So there's roughly around 607 islands. So we can kind of take it as an analogy, as it's kind of difficult to survey all of these islands. So what if you want certain attributes on it? You want to know the size of each island. You want to know if there's inhabitants, what kind of animals are living on there, whether or not they exist, because sea levels are constantly changing, et cetera, et cetera. So this is kind of dig against mass scale surveillance. It's difficult, because you're trying to evaluate all these islands. So my proposal is that what if each island can tell you whether or not it exists, and it'll tell you each attribute, and that's the whole point of self-determination. It should be up to each island to tell you what you want to know. So what we want to do is we want to enable a system to be self-determinate. We want to evaluate its compute conditions and then determine misuse. And then from there, we want to act accordingly based on these determinations we make. So we're going to go where no DLP solution has gone before, and I'll be succinct. This is a detection and response to booting of live operating systems. So how do we proceed? Well, we gotta go deep. We gotta go to a lower level. So there's a lot of work in, or there's a lot of prior work in low-level stuff. So, Kova has made this timeline site. He keeps it up to date fairly frequently. Like I think he updated like a few weeks ago. Actually, not a few weeks, like a few days ago. And it gives like a great chronology of the various attacks and all these different works in the low-level space. So I'm not going to dig too deeply into it because there's other resources for you guys to look at. So let's go through our insider threat profile. We have to create a scenario, right? So, our insider threat works in a sensitive environment, accesses sensitive materials, is knowledgeable of organization's network, and somehow he wears unfashionable glasses. And then let's define the environment profile. So typically, it has to incentivize them to use certain tactics. So let's say the environment has DLP systems. Some systems in a network or in the organization has external network access. So that's like the pivot point to move data out. Let's say we have internal network monitoring, and then there's some solution out there that fingerprints documents and then monitors its movements. And then we definitely have to have accessible ports on systems, so stuff like USB or CD drives that are accessible. So at a broad scope, we're looking at the malicious utilization of live operating systems. So this is what Micronesia addresses. So what is like a live operating system? It's kind of like Vegas. So what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? So let's create like an analogy. So you have a married couple. The husband goes off to Vegas and does whatever. You're kind of concerned, right? Because you can't really introspect into Vegas and see what they're doing. And then, we have a concerned wife, the administrator. Could be jealousy issues, but she just wants to know. She wants to feel satisfied that her husband's not doing anything bad in Vegas, but she can't know. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So, let's look back at the computation rings. Very general. We all kind of understand this. Divide out privileges. So a live operating system kind of does a replacement. So it works from the ring 0 all the way up to the ring 3, and its purpose is to basically replace what your standard system is. So for this scenario, let's assume that this system typically boots off a hard drive. And then booting into live operating system, you switch over, and then the original state of the machine's not really touched upon, or it really shouldn't be touched upon. So you're entering this now new container. And then you shut it down and then wipe away that container, all evidence is gone. So like real briefly on live operating systems, bootable without installation, USB, CD, DVD, SD cards, other things I can't think of. They kind of, a lot of them employ RAM file systems, so there's no persistence on shutdown, kind of an anti-forensics move. And then a lot of them actually do write-locked environments, so they make it difficult to write out to disk, kind of reducing the amount of residue you leave behind. So let's look at back to our DLP pillars. So in use, the RAM file system, keep the working environment in the RAM itself. It's volatile, shut off the electricity. The bits go away after time. And DLP can't see into this. In motion, you see network traffic encryption. And then, at rest, out of scope. I don't know what at rest is. All right, so typical uses for live operating systems, we have analysis. So something like NOPIX is used for digital forensics analysis. So, you see special or digital forensics people kind of go on a live system and they don't want to touch the system. You have government-made stuff like lightweight portable security. And then you have live OSs for establishing secure environments. This is what we're going to target. This is what we are considering our insider malice. And so what's the most popular live OS for such? It's Tails. So what is Tails? It's amnesic incognito live system. It's a privacy-focused live operating system designed to wrap all traffic to go out through Tor or I2P. These are our anonymizer services. It's specifically designed to wipe memory on shutdown, so anti-forensic quality right there. Minimizes residue left on the system, locked environment right there. And anti-forensics. The cute thing is that it has a Windows desktop environment camouflage, so that you can pretend like you're using Windows when you're really using Tails. So I mean, back to identifying directed intelligence. It's not about risk profiling. We want to be context sensitive in this case, and so we need to maintain control in a space outside of the live operating system's domain. So we kind of think back to the computation rings. There's already one ring that gains us that ability. So I mean, how do we address this? We need code boot persistence, and location-wise, we need to be at the sub-kernel. Timeline-wise, we have to be first to boot. So what's that? That's a bootkit. So we're constructing our bootkit now. So we use Tails, or we don't use Tails. We use Core Boot. It used to be known as Linux BIOS since 1999. Renamed to Core Boot. It's an open source project, basically to try to replace the BIOS system in modern computers. It's a pretty cool framework. I recommend you guys to take a look at it if you're interested. Basically, all it does is it bootstraps very minimal stuff on the hardware, and it executes a payload. It's not a complete booting solution, so keep that in mind. It supports many motherboards, and it's continually growing every year. So you can expect things from like small embedded devices to full server boards, and like I said, support is growing every day. So a device not supported today could be supported tomorrow. It just depends on how the community is. So how Core Boot works is that there's a boot block stage, and you got prepared to obtain a flash access, and then look up the ROM stage to use. Then once the ROM stage gets set up, it's basically just the memory and the early chip stuff. And then RAM stage, you set up the ACPI table, and then the system management mode handler, which we'll be using and talking about at a later point as our triggers. And after that, it sets up our payload. So you can set up the payload to be something like CBIOS, which is like a full x86 BIOS implementation. It's completely open source, and it supports pretty much most of what you can expect out of a BIOS. And then it also supports TianoCore as a payload, which is also a BIOS replacement, but it's kind of the open source reference framework for UEFI. Kind of a side note, but Apple, if you're doing stuff for Apple, like some boot stuff, they don't quite abide by TianoCore's reference. It's kind of like some weird midway thing. So just heads up, if you guys are going to go down that route, it's going to be a little bit of a headache, but you can expect that because it's Apple. So I mean, altogether, this is our complete boot solution. So what is Micronesia in this context? Micronesia is actually a bunch of modifications to CBIOS and TianoCore. And then we also have a core boot payload. The payload's lib payload compliant. So what that means is that we can be CPU architecture agnostic. So if some new architecture comes out, we can quickly support it. And then it also lets us, basically write once, kind of debug everywhere. So pretty good framework. And then we have other components involved with Micronesia, and then track triggers. So I have to address this real quick. I guess some of you guys are probably thinking, wouldn't Secure Boot stop this? Well, let me explain what Secure Boot is real quick. Firmware and software in the boot process that must be signed by a trusted certificate authority. So usually your boot code has to be signed before it's allowed to run. Windows 8 requires Secure Boot, and then TPM is optional. Guess what? We're playing defense, so it doesn't even matter. We can just shut it off. And we'll disable it for now, and then we can address it later. So let's talk about indicators of insider threats real quick. Oh, you didn't like that? No, you got to turn off security to add security. Yeah? No, you don't like it. We'll address it later. So problem space, detection of live operating system boot. We're going to make some assumptions. So might not like these assumptions, but we'll build on it. We gotta start at some point. So let's assume that, non-hard disk boots are an attempt to establish a live OS environment. So stuff like USB, SD, CD-ROM boots, we kind of want to detect this. So just two ways we can approach this. We can completely block it, and it's kind of like, sticking glue into a USB port. Or, you can block and signal out and indicate to a listening server that, yeah, someone's trying to boot into, one of these devices that's not a hard drive. And then we can do some other stuff too. So we can establish a boot profile for a system. So, something simple like on a new machine, you boot it 5 times off of a CD. So that's its boot profile now. So we can kind of expect that to continue booting off of a CD. And then, outside that profile, so we try boots outside of a CD, then it will be blocked. So, and then you can set it up to where you can unlock it and then reestablish a new profile. And there's like more things you can do. So you can do some image verification. It's kind of expensive. So kind of like some type of boot image whitelisting. And then going even deeper, this is getting more introspective. You can try to monitor and track the utilization of resources, basically trying to see what's going on. So as an example, you can try to detect that around file systems being made. The thing is that there's quite a bit of false positives with that. I believe Windows uses it for its load up process to speed things up. So it depends on how you go about it. All right, first demo. Yeah, sorry, I made a GIF because I was intending on embedding the demos into the slide itself and package it up. All right, so this is just demonstrating us blocking Tails boot completely. Very simple. A lot of people can be interested in this. They just want preventative policy. All right, this is us allowing Tails to boot up, but signaling out to a listening post that this is happening. Simple. So, let's address some further insider threat tactics. So preventative measures don't tell us too much. It doesn't allow us intelligence gathering. So we have to kind of, venture further into this. So insiders can do encryption of traffic, right? We've kind of discussed that before to mask data movement. They're running a live OS, so it denies you introspection into the live OS environment. And then masking transmission destinations, that's probably more campaign style to see where in the physical world the data is trying to move to. So let's kind of improve our questions. So we kind of address, can we detect an insider threat? So let's ask more. Can we react to an insider threat? Is deterrence a possibility? What are the insider threat's intentions, and what are the insider threat's motives? So this is the post-detection phase now. So we have to go beyond preventative measures. We need to see and reach into the live OS environment. Ideally, we want to understand and evaluate the insider threat. And we want to know what they have, if they have any IP from the company or confidential documents. And specifically, we need to know what they're trying to do. So let's define some reactive policies. We kind of want to define appropriate reaction to the detection of insider threat. Ideally, we want to gain some accountability and attribution, and then from there, we want to determine, intent and motive. So deterrence would apply that, or would imply that an insider is aware of the defense, but not necessarily. Like, you don't have to be scared. You just, fear is not an appropriate deterrent. But we can still seek accountability and escalate from there. So real quick with triggers, it's very prototypical bootkit, relying upon system management mode as our trigger, and from there we hook onto one of the interrupts. And there's many options in triggering SMI. You guys can look at other bootkit talks. Can't spend too much time on this. And then we have triggering options. We can set up it to be poll based, so you can set it up to where you can poll like every minute if you want. It can be event based. So interrupt based actually flushes out the system state, but there's no concern with that because we're going to go all out and try to get this insider threat. All right, so triggering descent, we're going to utilize some triggers, go back down to our controlled sub-kernel layer, trampoline back when we're finished, come back with some goodies, and then you know what? We're going to deny the threat resource access. All right, so this is Tails running already, post Micronesia boot. Our insider going to address, and guess what? We got a keylogger on him. So, what is that? It's an OS LAN kit. Allows us control towards the live OS environment. This is our introspection. It also allows us to be less reliant on our former triggers, so we don't have to hop back down to sub-kernel space. Input logging, demonstrate key logging, but we can do other stuff too. Probably turn on webcam, microphones, whatever you want, whatever you need to go against the insider threat. Output logging, what they see is what you get, so we can definitely do some poll dumping with the video buffer. It just depends on what you want to do against the insider threat. Wait a minute, isn't this a rootkit? No. We're on defense. It's called an agent. See, isn't defense awesome? You can just do crazy stuff and you just call it whatever. All right, so let's go back to our questions. Can we detect an insider threat? Yeah, of course we can detect it. Can we react to it? Yeah, we definitely detected it and responded to it. Is deterrence a possibility? Yeah. Active response, we can shut them off. What are their intentions? Just survey them for a bit. We can do semi-real-time surveillance on them right as they access that secure environment. And what are their motives? You can't see into their mind. Sorry, Bootkits don't do that. All right, so let's drop some goodies on Tails. So what do you guys think this does? Like, why would you name that and then just leave it in Tails in a production environment that you release to your users? A little script that says, "Do not ever run me." Like, who includes that? Out of curiosity. No, what it does is it flushes the IP tables. So this kind of so Tails normally wraps all its traffic to go out through Tor and ITP. This undoes it completely, and they just leave it in there. I don't know why. I guess for their testing stuff. But you shouldn't be releasing this to your users. You have something called DMI decode. This runs on startup every time. All it does is just query the BIOS. But we can also falsify information. It's very easy to do that. If you're looking to do a rootkit against Tails, check out the whisperback directory. There's some fun hooks in there. I won't spend too much time in there, but you guys can do some homework if you're interested. All right, so they also left serial backdoor in there, and they acknowledged this. It allows you to do shell commands over serial. The thing is that they know it, and they commented that it's usually only accessible over, or it's usually only accessible physically, and they say that a physical attacker, if they're able to access it, you're screwed anyways. That's not always the case. We can definitely turn it into a remote accessible thing, remote code execution. So what we can do is we can set up some SMM triggers on the serial registers, couple it with a UFI network socket, and then from there, you can go network to SMM trigger, move over serial communications, bam, we got remote code execution, or remote command execution through network. So thanks for the backdoor, Tails. All right, so enough knocking on Tails. We get it. It's kind of bloated. Just a lot of stuff in there that you guys really don't need if you're using these types of things. They prioritize usability over, security, but that's a common thing, especially when you're the most popular OS in this environment. So as a summary, infiltrate the dealer, find the supply. If we were going after drug dealers, but in our case, it's infiltrate the insider threat, find what they know. So altogether, this is a new defensive methodology using offensive means. You gotta try some stuff like that. Micronesia detects and indicates on suspected live OS boots. You can log out to a listening post. If it's network accessible, they can pull out the plug, but they'll still have the agent dropped into their OS. And then if configured, you can let the live OS boot, and then reach in, do some surveillance. And this is all done by trampolining a kit into the live OS space. And then what that does is it gives us full system monitoring. So now we're able to access the secure environment that we weren't able to before. DOP would never do this. And this is all tested against the latest Tails, which is released 4 days ago or something. I mean, of course it should work. There's no reason it shouldn't. So let's consider some advanced insider threat. So we're making some predictions. One is that we're going to start seeing people use more customized live OSs. So it's very probable that they're going to start creating their own bootable media, and then from there, introduce their own Linux kernel, and then compile it with GR security and patch flags enabled, and then streamline the entire setup with very bare-bone programs. What this does for us is increases the edge cases. If you're interested in doing stuff like this, there's a great Arch Wiki article in doing it, or Arch Linux Wiki article. We'll probably start seeing more bring your own device type, extrusions. So like specialized embedded devices, compute sticks. You're starting to see this a lot more at Consumer Electric, or whatever it's called, the CES in Vegas. You're starting to see that this whole computer is being sold as flash size looking things. And consider user verifiable social telematics. That's it's kind of like fully verified hardware, so each component of it is fully verified. This is actually outside of our scope. It's physical scope. So, I mean, this is all for the physical security aspect. A Bootkit would have never addressed this. Future work. So ideally, we're trying to get all the instrumentation to be contained at the sub-kernel, so we don't have to introduce too much logic into the live OS environment. More for to try to hide things, so we're less likely to be detected. We're trying to build out RAM file system tracking. So all changes to the RAM file system, whether you're moving data, adding data, deleting data. We want to expand the breadth of live operating systems supported. So there's a bunch of other operating systems that try to do the same thing as Tails. So something like Unix. It's just basically these operating systems that can be used for exfiltrating data. And then we want to go for full network capture. Ideally, we want to capture the network traffic before it's anonymized, so before it goes out through Tor or I2P in this case, or both cases actually. So to do that, you can just probably do some ELF patching and then have it hook out and spit out the traffic before it gets encrypted. And then of course we want to support secure boot in the future, so that's something we'd have to work with vendors on, get some keys or certificates. And then lateral work, I've been working on some reverse engineering tools that can actually be strengthened with low-level computing. So there's a lot of power you can gain out of that. So stuff like trace generation, it's kind of flawed for going through the kernel space, but we can definitely benefit if we have low-level access. So I kind of went too quickly, but I mean, that's basically it. If you guys have any questions. Yep. So the question is, have we done any other testing with other live OS environments? No. Actually, no, because we're time constrained on this. We like literally built it within the last like 2 months, so we've just solely focused on Tails. But I mean, we are going to move over into that area, like trying to expand out, like, look at other live operating systems. But we're primarily focused on like secure environments where it's possible to be used for exploitation. You in the back?
Yeah. My question is surrounding your predictions on what you think is coming from inside a threat.
Sure.
What makes you confident that that's the direction the threat's going to take? Specifically, why do you believe they're going to use the YOS product?
I'm just moving off of like previous insider threats and how they've moved from using Tails. So I'm making a prediction that people are going to start to use these prepackaged stuff a lot less. Does that kind of address that question? Or I think so.
What's your threat model? Why would you choose an approach like this over using full disk crypto to protect the data at rest?
It's just another option. Yeah. Just like, it's always nice to have different options because each option has its strengths and advantages. So full disk encryption would be like preventative measures, right?
Well, yeah, I guess I thought if you use full disk crypto in order to access your data, you also have to move the DLP as well. So
Yeah.
in this case, you're trying to address the case where the DLP is not running.
Well, it's even further. We want intelligence gathering because we can just simply block the insider threat, but we also want to know exactly what they have. And that's very crucial, right? So we completely block them. We don't get that intelligence on them. I think that's a very crucial aspect to this.
Are you going to release their this minor handler?
So there's like a lot of ethical concerns with releasing something like this, as you can probably imagine. So I guess some components can be released, but it's kind of difficult in the way it's packaged. So I'd probably have to go back to Austin and try to figure it out. Yeah, sorry I went too quick, you guys, but last talk. Yep.
So are you just concerned about them getting access to the local system and not so much the network? Because that's kind of one of my concerns to
Mhm.
or something. If people can get to that or if they go to find OS you can use.
I mean, it's kind of like all the above, like them setting up an environment where they can work in and nobody can look in. I think that's concerning.
So what I'm kind of wondering here is that there was a good talk here regarding BIOS when the release.
Yeah.
It's since you're using, it's great that it's open source and we resolve easily.
Yeah.
But it's is that kind of a concern for that? And on top of that, what if you just said that there's some way that you can assign it and that's going to be shipped up and out such that it's scalable to people who are part of the organization. Like I could have my own key,
Mhm.
and if I didn't have something to sign, that bootloader for BIOS just wouldn't work. And I understand
Yeah.
the data gathering aspect of it, but I think that would be a good approach, the whole disconnection of, hey, this thing's signed, this isn't, I'm not going to load it. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's where it's headed with secure boot. So, I mean, you probably want this capability in the future. So that's why we're going to try to address the secure boot aspect in the future.
Question from the internet. How deeply can you get into the running live OS?
We have a full rootkit in there. I mean, an agent. So, I mean, whatever you want to do at the host level. And then if you can't do it, you just hop back to UEFI and set up again and come back in. But yeah, whatever you can expect out of, rootkits, like typical surveillance stuff you see out there. Yep.
So you can control access to devices and things like that. Say you're not going to allow them to access the hard drive that's on there. It's not encrypted. You'd be able to block that.
So the question is whether or not we can block device accesses.
Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so Tails, for instance, automatically blocks write outs to hard disk. So we can definitely copy their maneuvers if we need to, or we can enable it and like make sure residue is being left behind. It's just adding digital forensics qualities to this so that you can help out investigators. I think that's it. You guys are free to go.